Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I'm Tiff, and I'm the founder and chief storyteller over at The Social Story. I'm based here in Sydney, or the land of the Gadigal people. So my story, I am born and raised in Sydney, Australia. My parents are both from Hong Kong and immigrated here over 40 years ago. Actually, independently, both of them, their families kind of sent them over to explore the opportunities that they could have to build an amazing lifestyle here in Australia. And they met while working in a restaurant. My dad ran restaurants for very many years, including one I basically grew up in that he ran for 36 years. So it doesn't seem as quite a bit of a surprise that I've ended up in the small business route as well, following in his footsteps in many ways. But when I was going through schooling and even my university education, I always had this fascination with communications. It's what I studied at university as well. I was just so enamored with this idea of how we craft stories, and even in the choice of our words and the way we frame certain situations can really have an impact on ourselves personally and understanding our own personal stories, but also on the world around us, particularly in the field of marketing and advertising. So I worked corporately for about 4 or 5 years, working my way through advertising agencies here in Sydney, had amazing opportunities to learn so much of this industry and work on some large multinational corporations. But I hit a turning point back in 2017 when I was incredibly burnt out. My mental health was really suffering, and I was struggling to find any purpose in my work. The most exciting thing would be that I sent a great passive aggressive email to a client, or was just pushing paper around to sell products for companies that already were doing quite fine without that sale. So I decided to take a sabbatical, was planning on just traveling, seeing the world, maybe pick up a few freelance jobs here and there. But it's now been close to 8 years and I never went back to the corporate space. During my travels, what I discovered was that I really did want to reconnect with my purpose and what I was most passionate about. And a lot of that was to do with uplifting the voices of other people, particularly those who are marginalized or not usually heard on mainstream platforms. For me, that came a lot down to racial diversity and also as a female. But more and more, I realized that this business space had great opportunity to integrate positive impact into our everyday business actions as well. And so that's where the social story kind of became a business, and now also a registered social enterprise. So we work predominantly with purpose-driven brands. Either they're already certified social enterprises or B Corps, or understand the importance of integrating positive messaging, empathy and kindness into their communications as well. We've now been running for close to 7 years as well, and really developing a framework of what it means to do ethical storytelling through social media, right down to the minute details of, say, using camel case in your hashtags, because it becomes more accessible for people who may use screen readers. That way, a screen reader will be able to say every word in a hashtag. So hashtag diversity connector with D and C capitalized versus just seeing a mumble jumble of letters. So these sort of practices are integrated into everything that we do for our clients, but also in what I want to be able to share quite openly. I don't want to gatekeep any of the things I've been able to learn in social and continue to learn from different communities that are teaching me things like how to make content more accessible. So we freely do workshops. We have all of our resources on the website and our socials as well. And yeah, really wanting to advocate for greater ethical storytelling throughout our industry and how we can change advertising into a force of good, particularly in the world of social, which most people can get very overwhelmed by the negativity or the the trolls and the spams or anything like that. I really do believe that social media can be a place for good, because the people are inherently what makes social media a thing. So if we are all ingrained in these principles of kindness and empathy, then the content that we produce and the content that we choose to see and share can also be aligned with our values as well. So as a founder now, I guess it's still definitely a wild journey to think that I've gotten to this point. I think growing up, I was very sure that I would end up following the corporate line, had not even really entertained the idea of starting something myself. So it's definitely been a really steep learning curve, but I found it to be the greatest opportunity to really challenge the way that business is run, making decisions that are in line with my values, building communities of other like-minded founders and change makers to see how we can be doing things differently. And that comes down to even, what bank that we choose to work with, or, how I structure my team and work with them to empower them as well and ensure that wellness and work-life balance is at the core of what they are doing as well. So it's definitely a crazy journey, but I'm really proud to be where I am. I think the fact that I am an Asian Australian female as well consistently does come up in conversations, both as a founder and in the advertising space and in the social enterprise space. And I have come to realize that sharing my story more and more on platforms like this is a really great way to see what I hadn't seen when I was growing up either. And realize that this is possible, and maybe something a young Tiff in the future would also want to pursue as well. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Wow, Tiff, what an incredible journey you've been on. It's really inspiring to see someone so young stepping into the space and really making a difference and using social media for good. So you mentioned a passion for empowering people to use social media for good. Can you share some examples of how you've used social media platforms to advocate for diversity and social impact?
From a kind of even day-to-day level, we work with a lot of clients that potentially don't have a huge set of bespoke assets themselves. Say they're service-based businesses, and they're searching for maybe even like stock imagery or something like that. And so we try and even choose the smallest thing of like, who are we going to represent in those images when we want to, convey a sense of there's the boss. When you get into Google search, you're still getting mainly straight white men who look like bosses. And so we want to challenge that narrative of like how visual imagery can, shift the focus of, how we see certain things. So there are some great, even free resources that we use, including WAC in tech, so Women of Color in tech. And it is, those kind of generic stock photos of people crowding around computers and things like that. But just, that small little decision to go, why haven't I seen an Asian woman being presented as the boss? So yeah, that's kind of on a day-to-day level. With our clients who are social enterprises, I think the biggest challenge I've seen in their marketing thus far is they usually don't have the resources or time to actually talk about the amazing work that they're doing. There's some really innovative ways that they've integrated impact into their business. Say we used to work with a catering company based here in Sydney called Radish Events. And they produce beautiful food, the most amazing grazing platters and everything. Like, everyone's going to love that. But then behind the scenes as well, they're really tackling the idea of zero waste. They're working with local producers and even like partners to help them with their florals. They're thinking about how they can reuse the florals in multiple events and that sort of thing, and being able to really explore that story and tell people about it just helps to start challenge the way of thinking that, a grazing platter doesn't just have to sit in waste for the rest of the day after everyone's taken their photos at the beginning of an event. So yeah, I love being able to highlight businesses like that because it's just a cool thing that they're doing as well. And it's beautiful, but it's about getting the word out there. And again, going back to the storytelling principles to make people aware that that's what's happening in the world, and they can make a choice to also go towards those better suppliers when they're planning their next event. Hire Radish.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about the Women in Technology photo footage or stock footage. I won the New Zealand Australia Women in Technology Awards in 2021. And I remember at the time thinking exactly the same thing, that there was no one on their platform that looked like me. So I'm African, I'm female, I'm in tech, and I'm 56. Well, no, 57 this year. And what was interesting was that I wasn't represented at all in any of their stock footage. And now that I've been trying to raise the funds to build the application that won the competition, it's again been very, very challenging to get funding because now ageism is against me. I'm Black, I'm female, all of those things that just go against you when you're trying to build a new technology company. So,
for sure. And I think there's the constant battle between, then maybe I'll dull myself down and conform into your vision versus going like, no, I'm out. I was like, yes, I am Chinese and you're going to know about that. And I'm going to show up individually. And that's when you're going to respect my power as who I am rather than me trying to fit your mold as well.
I love that. So in your experience working with brands across different sectors, how do you help them craft stories that resonate with diverse audiences and build inclusive communities?
Yeah, so I think it comes down a little bit to, the basis of social media is that it's a conversation with a brand. And I think people
Yes.
forget that a lot, because traditional advertising is like, you put a billboard up, you're going to have your message to say what it is. But social offers such a unique opportunity for brands to actually have a two-way conversation with their people. And so we start with
Yes.
listening. We go in and have a look at what people are already talking about and how we can authentically come into that conversation. So an analogy I really love using is like, if you're at a, and you're like trying to join a group for that conversation, you don't just like sit back and go, well, I'm Tiff, come talk to me. Like, you kind of find something that they're talking about that then you can kind of offer something in and then integrate yourself into the conversation. So when we work with a brand and start with their strategy, it's about finding that conversation hook. It's like, meet the people where they are. What are they talking about? How are they talking about it? What do they care about? And how does your business actually meet that need? And so, particularly with social as well, you have an opportunity almost every day to be presenting a new message to them. It's about, having that consistent conversation, changing it up. One post may be talking to your fan who's been there from the beginning, your biggest advocate, and you want to reward them for staying with you, or letting them know what the next phase of your business is, versus someone who's just discovering you for the first time, and so you need to give them a little bit more content. So it's about keeping that conversation going. And I think even something like when there is a business problem, say you've had issues with your deliveries, or the storms made it insane and you couldn't get a product out to your customer, I think the best policy there is honesty. And when you've consistently had that conversation with your customer and they know that you're showing up authentically, they'll get it. Like, things can go wrong. Like the internet might cut out on you occasionally, things like that. Like, I think it's important to stay authentic and always listen.
And that authenticity is everything, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
So now moving on to other aspects of your business. What was the decision for you to run the business as a social enterprise as opposed to a for-profit business?
Yeah. I've always kind of been fascinated by the social enterprise model. I think my first time ever seeing it was Thank You. Back then it was Thank You Water, and now, they're an incredible business and have consistently been very disruptive in how they do things. Like, even they launched a book to tell the story of how they actually launched, and they decided to print it like horizontally, and so you'd have to flip the book up to read it. Because they were like, why not? And then also it's a moment that, like, if you're sitting on a train reading the book, people are like, I don't think that's the way you're supposed to read a book. And that starts a conversation. So it is a very different sort of business model, and even the ways in which businesses give back, whether it is through volunteering hours or directly going into a community and, delivering education to people with disabilities or anything like that. It is a very fluid business model. And when I wanted to build a business, I was like, well, I don't want to do something that's just run of the mill. So why not explore this? And it just made so much sense to me that like some sort of philanthropy or giving back had to be a part of it, because it was what I was most passionate about. I started a lot of internships and volunteer roles, even in high school, in the marketing space, but for nonprofits. And so I wanted a way to get back to that. And it was a little bit of like a rejection of my previous corporate life. I was like, how far away can I get from it? And really revolutionize how any agency could be doing it. It is those small decisions that you make, even from like, who you bank with or anything like that. Every time you can make that decision, you can make it a decision good. And so that's what kind of really led me down the social enterprise space, and building a community of other amazing social entrepreneurs around here. Australia has a really exciting scene, like Thank You, of course, which was started in Melbourne, and then so many more, and like Who Gives a Crap, all these sort of really cool brands that are doing amazing things, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I mean, it's definitely evolving. There are so many different ways that a marketing agency or any business for that matter can integrate good into their daily practice. And so we're still also figuring out exactly what that model means, and how much impact we can actually make.
So accessibility is crucial for inclusive storytelling. Can you discuss strategies or initiatives that you've implemented to make social media content more accessible to diverse audiences?
Yeah, from a base standpoint, there are some really clear things that we kind of see as a checklist for any piece of content that you put out. So for videos, it's always great to have closed captioning. Now, brilliantly, a lot of apps, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, have auto-generated captions that are available. It's not only good for people who are hard of hearing, but particularly on social, a lot of people still watch their feed on mute. So it's just a good idea. I mentioned earlier about the hashtags around creating, using camel case. So capitalizing the beginning letter of every word in your hashtag. That again makes it easy for screen readers. Including alt text into all your imagery. Again, places like Instagram can now auto-generate that, but it's always a good idea to either put it into the metadata of the image that you're posting, which can be done on the phone app, or just a small little like image description down the bottom. So whoever is using a screen reader can still benefit from the visual imagery and understand what you're trying to portray.
Okay.
And then also clean and clear designs. There are different tools, including, it's called like colors.cc, that just help you see the different color contrasts to ensure that they're accessible for people and things like that. So, our graphic designers in our team are always deep in that. Just as much as we want to put nice frills and make something different, it's about making it simple enough as well that they're not throwing everything at you as well. But I think one of the key things is, also just talking to people with lived experience of disability. I don't have personal lived experience with it. I do have someone very close to me who does. And then we also partner with organizations like Avenue Co-working that do training and capacity building for people with disabilities to better understand like what they need to be able to experience social better and how we can design for them. And I think that's actually one of the most important, is actually asking them, because they're the ones who are doing it day to day.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of times people don't even consult with the communities that are in need. We go in under the assumption that we know what they need.
100%. And, from the level of women of color, we definitely know that side of things, that people will very easily presume what we are comfortable with or not.
No, that's interesting to observe. So now let's talk a little bit about all of your accolades. You've been recognized as the Midweek Next of the Best for 2023 Creative Agency. You won the Silver Prize, and you've been listed on AA 122. Do these accolades impact your mission to use social media for social good?
That's a really good question. I have kind of gone a little bit back and forth with them, because yeah, we're not here to do it for the awards, but at the same time, being able to be on those stages and get that recognition does highlight the work that we're doing, and bring it to a greater audience. I think particularly things like the Media Week Awards or things like that was very much more rooted in that corporate side of things. And I think when I first was nominated, there was a level of me going like, oh, I'm really glad my old bosses will be able to see it, so they don't think I, screwed up my life by quitting my job all those years ago. So it did feed the imposter syndrome quite well. But at this, it was an exciting moment to be able to be recognized for all the hard work that myself and my team has done. And, for a business that has very much been rooted in trying to do everything differently, but then to be recognized in the space that we were trying to dissent from, was a really cool moment. And then the Asian Australian list, the AA 122, that was wild as well, because there was like Penny Wong on the list as well. And these amazing people that I do idolize. But it's also just such an amazing opportunity, run by the Asian Australian Alliance, to celebrate us, because it is often very hard to find other, public or well-known people who are Asian Australian. And that in itself is a very overarching label. A Korean Australian versus a Chinese, or rather a Hong Kong Chinese Australian as well, is very different. And, where when I'm the only one in the room, I'm often expected to speak for my entire continent. So the more we can celebrate 120, and this they did 123. That's more exposure to this community, and I can feel a little less alone as well. That we're all out there, and we can be individuals as well, and not have to speak for our entire community.
I love it. It's very, very important to have that that representation. So my final question for you is, what advice would you give to other social media professionals or businesses looking to use their platforms to drive conversation on diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it's definitely, the whole industry is moving towards that. We do see a lot more even long-standing corporate brands want to take stands on certain issues, particularly around Pride Month or International Women's Day or anything like that. I think the most important thing I'd say is ensuring that it is authentic, that you're not just doing it because it's for a trend, and that you're really understanding it from a level of, it isn't a marketing opportunity. It is an opportunity to do good in your business and then tell the story of what you're doing as well. I think that's when you come from it from a place of authenticity and actual truth. People can't call it woke washing or, performative in any way. As much as it's great to have marketing that is focused around impact, it's only go so far if you're not also going to do the work behind it as well, and celebrate women on every other day, not just March 8th. Yeah, exactly. So I think authenticity is definitely going to be the most important thing, and being really aware of what that level of communication means to your audience and to your business.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tiff, for coming online today and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom with the community. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and just to see what you're doing in this space. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate you creating this platform for us. And it's been such a pleasure to chat.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you voices from people from all over the world to uplift, inspire, energize you, but to share our experiences in our shared humanity. We want to celebrate diversity. We want to use it as a strength. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Tiff.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,